Hello and welcome, everybody. I am Brian Smith, the publisher at Inside the Knights on Fan Nation, powered by Sports Illustrated, and you are listening to the Who's Next Football Recruiting Podcast. This podcast will be all about one thing, and that is reviewing UCF's current commitments for the class of 2022. So far, the Knights have 8 commitments, and it's a pretty balanced group. Long term, I expect UCF to approach 16 to 18 high school kids, but I would just kind of want to go over the players that have committed as of today. So with that, let's start off with this list. The most recent kid is probably the one I know the best from this, and that would be Nikai Martinez. He's a cornerback out of Apopka, and he is on the northwest side of Orlando, so he's a local player to UCF. And not only is he very good, he brings a couple of different attributes to the program that one cannot teach. Number one is leadership. I had the opportunity to interview Nikai here recently over the weekend during the Varsity Sports Network Orlando Media Day for all the high schools in the Orlando area. And I'll tell you this much. He knows that this is his last ride. He wants to get back to a state title championship, and he wants the opportunity to do it as a leader. He went out of his way to tell me that he wants to set a precedent for the young men that come after him. That's somebody that's showing maturity, leadership, and understanding that he wants to have a legacy at his high school. For those of you that don't know, Apopka is not your traditional high school football program, even by state of Florida standards, which this is obviously as good as it gets for high school football in America. He is at a program that is expected to be excellent each and every season. And he's the guy that oftentimes is the captain for a game, and they certainly have plenty of talented players that could march out to the middle for the coin toss. So Nikai as a player is 5'11", 175 pounds, and I discussed with him in the interview, and it's up on the site, by the way. Yesterday I put it up. He's a guy that can play multiple positions for UCF. They want him to play corner, but they also want him to play nickel. He needs to learn both. There's assignment-specific duties with those, but they're both essentially a cornerback. But here's the key point with it. Nickel is a position that a lot of teams will use different kinds of players. Smaller corners, bigger corners, a safety, a hybrid linebacker, because it really depends on who plays in the slot for the opposing team during a specific play. You may even see a team line up a traditional corner in the slot to begin, and then with a motion, a shift, or whatever, a tight end ends up there, they might move guys around or change it. This is the kind of player that can really do different things, even though he's not the biggest guy. Nikai understands football. He wants to be the one involved in the run game as much as the pass game, so physicality is not a concern. I expect him to play early and play often for UCF once he arrives, because he has it not only from a physical standpoint, but he understands football is a mental game. It's a team game. It is the ultimate team game. And defense today plays from a disadvantage because of the spread, all the RPO action and everything. The offensive linemen get 3 yards beyond the line of scrimmage to kind of show run, but they end up passing it. Defense is at a total disadvantage. So you need players like him that can think on his feet, make a reaction, boom, and change a game with a big play. He has that kind of capability. And him being able to do it at multiple positions helps. He even threw in, without asking, that he's cool with the opportunity to play safety if they want him to. That's a team player. So out of this class, I think the overall statement here is Nikai Martinez is going to help UCF one way or another. Moving on, looking at this class, another local kid, Castianus Thompson, defensive end from Lakeland, Florida. He is a national recruit, much like Nikai Martinez. He could have went to a number of programs. He had an offer from Miami, he had an offer from Alabama, an offer from Texas, et cetera, et cetera. He had a ton of offers. He wanted to stay closer to home. He really liked the environment at UCF, and that's why he selected the Knights. He's a bit of an introvert. He's a quiet kid, doesn't really like doing interviews and whatnot. But the one time I had the opportunity to spend a little time with him at one of the Lakeland workouts this summer, he's a good guy, and he's easygoing, but he's extremely motivated. Don't let his shyness fool anyone. Thompson wants to win, and he wants to be ranked very highly. He lost one of his stars on one of the networks. I forget which one it was, but it pretty much ticked him off, and he has something to prove. I think that's really cool. And, hey, like he said, I need to get some of my respect back this season. So I expect a lot of things from him. Now, last year, Thompson played 240, 245. He's closer to 260 now, and he's a kid that can play strong side in. And if you want to, on third down, you could move him inside to 3 technique, the defensive tackle position, and he could be very effective as a pass rusher. The other aspect to that is he helps other guys. Some players aren't as versatile. Thompson, again, he's a national recruit. He could have went pretty much anywhere he wanted. Having that versatility will allow him to make other players for UCF a little bit better. Another player to talk about, and this is one of the fun guys in the recruiting class, is the quarterback, Thomas Castianus. He is from Ware County High School in Waycross, Georgia, southeast part of the state, and he plays for one of those programs that just goes crazy over high school football, and the town kind of shuts down a little bit when they have a home game. I'm going to go up there and check them out a little later this season. But Castianus is a guy that when I watched him first this year in 7-on-7 action, he played for a team called Tight Action 7-on-7. He was a corner, and he was dominant, very physical, and he would lock guys down. But he also played quarterback, and I didn't know that's the position that UCF at that time was recruiting him at, and I hadn't even started the site Inside the Knights on Fan Nation powered by Sports Illustrated. So I was, really clueless about it, and I didn't even think to ask him. I took photos, talked to him all the time, no big deal, but had no idea. Watching his film from Ware County, he is the perfect run-pass option type of quarterback. This is the kind of guy that Gus Malzahn, the now head coach for the UCF Knights, has utilized in the past and done really well. He's a fit. And beyond that, he's a kid that wants to prove people, hey, I can play quarterback at the college level, and I can be very successful. Just from communicating with him, he's all about it. I'm going to do a little special with him later this year and try and get some film breakdown with him and talk to him about reads and options and things like that. So it's going to be a lot of fun with him because he has so much upside. Again, the talent to play corner, but the physical skills also to play another position, and that is quarterback. That is incredibly rare. So something to think about with Castellanos. He is a very talented player. Sticking with that area of the state of Georgia, Tyler Griffin is a wide receiver. He is a talented prospect overall. He's a guy you could play kind of like Castellanos at multiple spots, but he prefers to play receiver, and he's actually giving up basketball this year. He's a two-sport guy. He can jump over you. He can dunk on you. He's all that. 6'4", 200 pounds, just scratching the surface of what he can do. Quick, athletic, even though he's long and has high hips, he's a kid that can move laterally and make people miss. The other part about him, he can high point the football and score. Excuse me. He's not a kid that's just going to be a long player down the field, though. The most important part about him, he has the ability to make people miss in space. Makes him a very valuable recruit. The next guy on the list, Jamel Johnson. Now, this is kind of the other end of the spectrum for defensive end recruiting. You need multiple guys at defensive end every year. You have the ability to find players across the country that can do it, but can they really play on both sides, meaning strong side and weak side? Johnson could do both. And like I mentioned a minute ago with Thompson, they complement each other quite well. If you move Thompson inside on 3rd down and 7 or something like that, Johnson could still be your strong side end or weak side, depending on the other player that's in the rotation. They help the balance of the defensive end rotation and the defensive line overall. He's from Chaminade Madonna High School down in Broward County, just north of Miami. And he plays at a program that wins all the time. And it's just a great football program. That kind of winning attitude, you can always add it to your roster, and it's a good thing. Jamal's a great kid, and I look forward to seeing him in a UCF uniform. The other young man that's kind of a local kid that everybody just, they don't know much about him, and I think he's just a heat-seeking missile, is TJ Bullard. His dad is a famous wrestler and all that, but this young man's going to make his own name. It's a big-time program that he plays at in Berkeley Prep. They've really raised the bar there. They have a lot of talent. They got a kid that's committed to Notre Dame. They've got kids committed to other places, and they've got a lot of young talent as well. They got a kid committed to Iowa State. There's a lot of talent there that he practices with every day, and much like Chaminade Madonna, it helps elevate. When you play with great players, there's a higher expectation. Then you bring that to the next level, And fortunately for UCF, Bullard will be attending the Knights campus in Orlando. I think he's going to end up being a hybrid linebacker or possibly a will linebacker, but he's versatile. Even if they made a public announcement, which they're not technically allowed to per NCAA rules, and UCF said Bullard's only playing one spot, I wouldn't believe it because he's very intelligent. He reads things based on his film a little bit differently than most guys, and he also has the ability to move over if he wanted to. He could be a receiver or an H-back or something like that at the college level. He's easily one of the best athletes in the class just from a physically gifted standpoint, but he's learning football differently. He played some receiver as an 8th grader. He's moved around some. He's getting bigger. I just think you just have to let his position naturally take shape. Again, he could play hybrid. He could be a will. He's a guy that you can move around. Versatility is very important, and that's something that UCF is going to be able to utilize within their nickel package, their dime package, or a base package. Bullard's going to find a home pretty quick. As a freshman, even if he doesn't break into the lineup, and that's to be determined, I guarantee you he will play special teams. He is the prototype for what you want running down on the kickoff team. So that's something to think about as well. Another kid from the state of Florida, Miguel Maldonado. This young man is an offensive lineman that comes over from the basketball court. 6'6", 325 pounds. I'm sure a lot of basketball players that went up against him weren't real thrilled about that. In the post, he was obviously the biggest guy down there, and he's quite frankly a bull in a china shop. He's just learning the game of football. He's only played 1 year at Lakeland, but even just from that film, and he was coached pretty well, it's interesting because he showed great feet. If you can kick step and you're 300-plus pounds and you're 6'4" or taller, you've got a chance to play college football. This kid fits the profile to a T. Maldonado just needs to learn all the little intricacies of watching film, understanding what the guys are going to do across from him, understanding the most likely move in a situation, what a defense might do, whether they might slant, whether a guy likes to slap rip, etc. It's just about work ethic. He has the physical tools to play at the very highest level at some point, but first he's got to get to UCF and make his mark. At 6'6", 325, even though he's massive and he could certainly play guard, this is a young man that I project to play right tackle or left tackle. Coach Herb Hand will figure that out once he gets to UCF, and maybe he'll play both at some point, but he's an offensive tackle. Don't let the size fool you. This young man has the feet to do it. Kayden Kittler. Speaking of offensive linemen, this is the young man from the Dallas area. He plays at John Paul II. It's one of the few private schools in Dallas, and he is another kid with great feet. He played left tackle some last year for his high school, but he projects at center or guard for the Knights. This young man has the ability to play in space. He's one of the best guys I've seen for anybody, regardless of which recruiting class you're talking about, at playing in space and blocking smaller guys on a wide receiver screen, a running back screen, or just extending the play, making his first block and then moving down the field to pick up a second block. It's interesting that they're going to get a kid like this because Herb Hand was at Texas. He was recruiting him, and then he comes over to UCF. I mean, UCF doesn't recruit Dallas that much, but now they're going to get this young man. It's a great pickup because not many guys are on that level that kind of go under the radar from Dallas. When I watched his film, I was puzzled. Why didn't he have more offers, and why wasn't his ranking higher? It still puzzles me. I'm not really sure what it is, but it's comical. And I know that the offensive line is the most difficult position to grade for me by a landslide. There isn't even a second or third place because you need to see what I would like to call vertical film, meaning you're standing behind the offensive line. Well, you can't really do that on film because you'd have to be on the field. And most high schools don't have the video equipment to really zero in and watch film, even though they have some of these stands behind the goalposts and whatnot. It's usually not close enough because offensive line play is all about technical ability. It's learning your craft, and it never, ever ends. Even if you're an NFL All-Pro, you're still working on your craft. So Kittler's been coached well. I just don't know where they're going to play him short term. I know long term, he's told me that Coach Hand is brought up playing center, and that's certainly a possibility. But I think he's a kid that could be the rare exception of his height that could play tackle if you had to put him out there. He's not necessarily the longest kid, but he's very adept at making plays. He figures it out as he goes, and he's got great feet. If you can do those two things, there's at least a chance you could play right tackle if need be. Certainly can play guard or center. Quickness, he can play to the second level after double teaming at the first level, coming off that block, staying low, short, choppy feet, and engaging with a linebacker and or safety. This is a young man that UCF could really transform into the next center somewhere down the line. And that's great because center play has become very, very complex, not only at the professional football level, but college as well. He can make the checks. He can understand what's coming. This is a young man that takes academics seriously. So that's the kind of player that usually ends up snapping the football, and Kayden Kittler definitely fits that. With that, that's going to wrap it up for this edition. I do want to say that there's going to be quite a bit in regards to recruiting coming up in terms of projections. Some of the players are recruiting reviews. I've kind of started in on the 2023 prospects in the state of Florida. It is an incredible class in 23. I'll still hit on a few of the 2022 prospects as well. But those young men in 23, it's just for whatever reason, it kind of goes in cycles. There's a class that's just great. The 23 class has 10, 15 guys that could be instant impact at any program in the country. And there's a handful behind them that you could also make an argument for. UCF is recruiting many of these young men, and I'm certainly going to cover them. I've seen most of them live multiple times already through 7-on-7, going to a high school practice, a game, etc., a camp, whatever it may be. But now it's an opportunity to watch some of these young men live again because, hey, it's August. Fall camp is here for high schools and colleges. UCF and all these other schools are going to it. And the games for high schools start in a few weeks. On the 20th, 27th, you got jamborees and different things and these kickoff classics, whatever you want to call them. It's just an excuse to play another football game. And I'm all for it. So if you would, please like, subscribe. I am going to be here for the foreseeable future. I have no interest in going anywhere else. I really like being in Central Florida and covering UCF. So it's a lot of fun. There's going to be a ton of high school coverage, not only in Florida, but throughout the Southeast, Georgia and Alabama in particular. I love those states as well. And I'm going to travel a lot along with John Garcia, the director of recruiting for SI. We really enjoy hitting the road and seeing all these different players. So you never know where I'm going to show up. Things change. I kind of have a tentative schedule over here to the side. You can't see, but it's interesting because this year's schedule has a lot of great games. IMG is playing some teams that you wouldn't necessarily expect. And then there's like Lakeland hosts Apopka, and Nikai Martinez is actually going to be playing against his future teammate, Castianus Thompson. I'm definitely going to that game. That one's circled on my schedule. There's no doubt about that one. And there's a lot of other opportunities to see kids. Even here in Tampa where I live, there's plenty of talent. Bullard plays over at Berkeley. I'm going to have to go see him practice and or play this year. I can't wait to scout all these kids. So like I said, like, subscribe, and make sure you check out Inside the Nights on Sports Illustrated. It's a blast, and I really like being here. Everybody have a great day, and thank you very much.